Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial. Go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Check show notes for link. ADHD Rewired, episode number 21. This is the show designed to help those of us who have really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. Whether you have ADHD and you want to learn more about it, or you are looking for ways to organize your time, your things, or the many details of life so you can get more done, this show is for you. My name is Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, coach, and consultant. We know that starting can be the hardest part, so let's get started.
Sorry. It was perfect. Other than that, I was like, oh, that's a great introduction. I feel all special.
There we go. Take 2 of the intro of a what's my show called? ADHD Rewired. Episode number 21. This is already going to be a great show. I am here with another member of the ADHD Rewired community, and her name is Kim Trumbo. Kim Trumbo is a host of a number of different podcasts. One is the Generosity Philosophy podcast. The other, she's a co-host for the OK to Be LGBT podcast. She's also a part of the Simple Freedom Network marketing team. She's a parent, and she still works full-time trying to juggle all of these passions with ADHD. How did I get it on take 2?
That was perfect.
Let's do this. How are you, Kim?
I am magnificent. I love your show, and I'm honored to be on it. Thanks for inviting me, Eric.
Well, I'm glad that you said yes, and I'm so thrilled that you're with me today. So what we're going to try to do is get a feel of who you are, kind of what you do, and really dive into both how you manage your ADHD and also where are some of the challenges that you're still having with ADHD. So if we can begin by just kind of telling us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Well, I'm 33 years old. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was, oh goodness, I have to do math on the show. It was about, well, that's easy math, 2009. So that's 5 years ago.
Okay.
So as an adult already in the working world, quote unquote, as when I was diagnosed with ADHD. And, I mean, you pretty much nailed it in terms of all the different things I juggle. Yeah, I'm just kind of a busy person, but I love it. I mean, I think people who have ADHD or ADD definitely thrive by being busy. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah, you know, it's. I used to enjoy just having a lot of downtime and just relaxing more. I don't know if it's like I just have so many things that I'm energized by that are keeping me busy, or I just like forgot how to relax. I don't know.
I wish I could say that I can relax. It's my biggest struggle. I can. It is hard for me to sit and watch a movie. I like it when I do.
I feel the same way.
But I'm tapping my foot thinking of all the different things I could be doing. So, yeah, it's a love-hate thing.
So
for sure.
You were diagnosed at age 29, so not that long ago. What brought you to that diagnosis? How'd you figure out that you had ADHD?
Well, actually before that, so going back to when I was in college, I struggled with keeping things organized, and I had this feeling of constantly feeling overwhelmed. And the doctor at that time had decided that was anxiety. And so I had taken some medication for anxiety. Then when I had met my partner and my wife of now 10 years, she, back in 2006, served for the National Guard and was deployed to Afghanistan for a year and a half. And so my doctor at that time, when I went in crying and a bit of an emotional wreck, said, "I think you have depression." Well, then my partner, her name's Heather. She came back to the States, and voila, I'm all better. So then they decided that was situational depression. So I wasn't on meds for that anymore. And so by the time I'd gone to my doctor after taking a quiz or some kind of an online, survey, I said, I think I might have ADHD. I think, knowing that I had previously taken meds for anxiety and depression, he kind of was like, hold the phone here, lady. Maybe you need to see a psychologist. And so I went and did that, which was an interesting experience. Actually, I think I was 28 at the time. And I mean, the whole reason for me doing that and taking that online survey, Eric, was because at work, I work in the field of social services. So I do have to talk to people and interact with people, whether it's my coworkers or the families that we help. And I kept catching myself either interrupting people or feeling as though I wasn't listening to them. They would say something and I was in Kim La La Land. And I felt awful about it. And so, not being a good listener, or also not being able to have that constant desire to interrupt people because my thoughts were just right there,
Him.
Yeah. You're fine. So is what, made me say, hey, doc, can you help me out? He said, hey, Kim, why don't you see a psychologist? So anyway, I went, saw a psychologist. He diagnosed me, and off to ADHD medication regimens. I went. So
what was the assessment process like for you?
It was really interesting because, like I said, for my job, I work with people who oftentimes have mental health issues. And so we send clients and people that we work with to have psychological evaluations done. So it felt kind of, to be, not that I go around lying all the time, but so I don't love this saying, to be honest, but, being transparent, I guess, is that it felt a bit weird. Like, what's wrong with me that I have to go see this psychologist, kind of a feeling. But I got over it knowing that this is going to help me. And I really should take my advice that I give the people I work with, right? Like, this is going to help you because there'll be recommendations and then you could follow those and better your life. Yet I was being a bit stubborn and didn't know if I'd want to do that. But I did. The psychologist was a great guy, a bit of a hippie dude with his Birkenstocks and his long hair. I liked him. And, he just asked me a bunch of questions and then had me do this little, I don't know what you call it, a test on the computer where you hit a button when you see a certain dot or line or something.
Okay.
I'm sure you know the name of that, but I don't know what it is.
There's a couple different tests like that. There's the quotient. There's the TOVA test. And all of these things measure variables of attention. So they're like these exceptionally boring tests that are going to test your errors of omission, errors of commission, which basically mean like when do you not hit it when you're supposed to, or when did you hit it when you weren't supposed to. Right. And they do it for long enough because, we can probably do it okay for a minute or two. But when you get to longer into these tests, that's when you start to see that the real patterns that statistically show patterns that are relevant with ADHD. But any of these tests, the thing that I think it's really important to emphasize to people who are thinking about getting a diagnosis or an evaluation is that there actually is no test for ADHD. And the way to kind of understand that is that the assessments that we use are validated through research. So, the power of statistics, which sounds really boring, but it actually is very powerful. However, it's not like, pregnancy where you either are or you're not pregnant. A lot of what we do in mental health has a lot of subjectivity to it. So these tests help inform the clinician, but the clinician is the one who makes that diagnosis. So kind of in the nutshell explanation of that is tests don't diagnose people, people diagnose people.
Right.
But go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I do recall him giving a questionnaire for me to give to my wife.
Good. I was going to ask you about that. Good.
Yeah. And it was probably pretty consistent with the one I answered for myself. So, which
now, were you looking over her shoulder when she was doing it?
No. I said, I already know how you're going to answer this, but here, you got to fill this out for the doctor. So,
and sometimes that can be really, really informing to see how differently the person's self-rating sees it versus a loved one sees it.
Right. Yeah. I think if you're a person who, I guess just who isn't as self-aware, it's not as though you're trying to lie when you're answering the question. You just don't notice that about yourself. But she reminds me. So, so I was able to.
She helps you be your best self, huh?
Yeah.
That's great.
That's true.
So let's go back for a moment to talk about the interrupting that you found that you were doing a lot at your job.
Sure.
So is this something that you kind of noticed yourself, or was somebody or other people giving you feedback about that?
I think I just noticed it myself, and I noticed when other people did it. And so then once I got on medication, it's not as though I go around thinking that I know everything about ADHD, but I am like, whoa, that so was me, 6 years ago. And I bet you that person doesn't know they have ADHD. And not that I could, I'm not, like I said, a psychologist or expert, but I certainly feel as though the ways that they interact in the world and speak with other people, was similar to how I was. And so no, fortunately, because that would have been a little embarrassing, nobody specifically said, hey, Kim, I noticed you're doing this a lot. We got to talk about it. But I noticed it. So fortunately, the supervisor I had at that time, who's now no longer my supervisor, but a good friend personally, she was very understanding during the process, and when I came to work and said, I might start being a bit different, maybe a bit more calmer, because I found out I have ADHD, and so I'm going to be taking medication. And it's
how did she respond to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, the interesting thing is that I get mixed reactions because a couple times I've gone on and off my medication, and boy, everyone could tell, including myself. And her reaction was, she was, very understanding and okay, well, let me know if I can help you in any way. But we would sit and have a meeting, and I would just be very calm, I wouldn't have knee-jerk reactions, if you will, to certain things that previously would get me a little bit fired up and agitated. And she would make comments, like, wow, Kim, I think your medication really, almost in a joking way, she'd be like, maybe I need some of the medication. Not that she had ADHD, but just because she could see that I could be a little bit slower to react and process things differently and not be all over the place. So,
because sometimes slower is faster in a sense, because, when you don't stick your foot in your mouth, you don't have to spend the time taking it out of your mouth. Exactly.
And I would do a lot of that, or I would staff a case with her and talk about, the dynamics of the family and just be like, what did I start talking about this for? And she would just laugh, and she was really good at helping me kind of get back on track. But I just felt like I was so frequently without medication, just talking in circles and not knowing where my point ever was going.
So, Kim, tell us maybe a little bit of some of the strategies that you're currently using to help that. Because, we know that medication doesn't make all of these problems go away. It's kind of like it's the fuel to actually power our use of these strategies.
Right. Well, using the example of having conversations with people and not wanting to interrupt them. I don't know where I got this tip, either from a book or a website or something, but I always have a notepad or something nearby to take notes of the conversation anyway. But as I'm speaking with them, if they're talking about something and I really want to jump in and ask a question or make a comment, I'll just jot it down so that it's there, it's on the paper, I can come back to it. And
so how much of that do you write down? Because I do something very similar where I'll typically write one word down, sometimes I even draw a quick like stick figure picture to jot that idea so I can stay focused in the conversation. Because I realize I'm working, as I work with kids too, and I'm trying to help them with interrupting, is they don't want to lose their idea, so they want to get it out, which is often the case why people are interrupting. But then if they're writing it down, they will write down every detail, and then they're kind of disengaged in the conversation.
Right.
So it's we kind of take for granted how that kind of is called gestalt processing, that big picture thinking, how quickly that needs to occur. So to be able to summarize in one word the point that you're trying to make while you can still kind of stay tuned into the conversation can be really tricky. So how do you do it?
I think I try to condense it to 2 or 3 words. So let's use an example of somebody's talking about their rent. And I know that, our agency may be able to help them with their rent, but I don't want to interrupt them as they're telling their story. And so I'll just write the word rent and then a symbol of like dollars and, a smiley, like something that I know that when I go back and see that word or those 2 words, that will kind of click with me. So yeah, I don't have a great, wonderful, method other than what works for me in my.
No, but that's great. And I really think that successful management of ADHD really has to do with lots of little things. There's not this like one like silver bullet, solve all your problems strategy. It's it's like the whole arsenal is what you need. It's like all these little things. It's having the a pen and paper always in arm's reach, or whatever it is. So I was wondering if there are some other tools or resources that are your big guns in your ADHD tool belt, whether it's an app or other kind of resource that you use to really help manage, whether it's your capturing of ideas or your processing of ideas. So what are your tools?
All right. Well, I'm going to get to pat your back now, Eric, because I do have to say that I love your show, and I feel like I've learned a ton about managing and productivity from your show. So I would be lying if I didn't first say, if you are just now listening to ADHD Rewired, please go back and listen to all of Eric's shows because they're fantastic. And
where do I send the check?
Sincerely, no. Yeah, he paid me $50 to say this. No. But aside from that, because your podcast is the first one that I've found and really felt valuable in terms of hearing stories and listening to advice and tips and tricks regarding ADHD. And aside from that, though, you and I were talking before we hit record. I love me some Evernote. That's one of my favorite tools. I also stumbled upon an app, and I don't think I've heard you in a past show talk about it. So I'm hoping you're going to say, "Oh, cool! I've never heard of this." And if you have, oh well. But it is called 30-30.
30-30, yeah. I think in the app on Time Tools, I touched on it.
Oh, okay. So I heard about it on a different podcast earlier this last week, and I downloaded it and played around with it one afternoon at work, and it helped me immensely because the whole concept, in case anyone did miss that show of yours or doesn't know what 30-30 does, it essentially helps you to time yourself with your activities. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. I've only used it a couple of times, but for somebody who is very visual, like I certainly am, it has different colors for your different activities, and you can customize it for if you're going to do a certain activity for 30 minutes and you're 25 minutes in and you think, holy shnikes, I certainly am not going to get this done in the next 5 minutes, but I don't want to go on to the next one. You can add time to it.
But it has that visual, it has that circle that shows you time kind of disappearing. And so it's kind of like a task list that each item on that task list has a time that you set to it. You can create visual icons for each of those items. You can create a task list that's a repeated sequence, so you could save it as folders. So if you're wondering, I have an hour, do I have time to work out? And you've kind of figured out your workout sequence, you can kind of plug it in and see. And the other cool thing is that it will show you the end time of each task based on what time it actually is.
Yeah. You described it much better than me.
I'm really nerdy when it comes to these apps. Like I really get into them.
Yeah. And I didn't know all of the different folders and things like that. I just played around with it, like I said, when I learned about it last week, and it was helpful for me to say, this task should take 45 minutes, but I'm going to give myself an hour because I know myself. But, and then so on and so forth with putting them in order of priority and then time that it ought to take me. So that was helpful to help me keep on task, on point, if you will.
And you can also sync it across from if you have an iPhone and an iPad, you can sync both ways. And one of the things that I like to use it for if I'm at home, let's say I'm getting together maybe making a bigger meal or something, and I have a lot of other things that I need to really keep a track of what time it is. Do you have Apple TV? Or have you seen that?
I'm somewhat familiar with it, but I don't have that.
So you can put whatever is on your iPhone, your iPad, and you can project it onto your TV through that, which is awesome. I love it. So I'll have the timer actually on the TV, so I can see it really big. So it's right there. It's that constant reminder, having time kind of in your face. So I love 3032. It's a great app. I think it's only on the iOS platform, though. I don't think it's on Android. Yeah.
The only other thing that I would say that's helpful to me at work, primarily at work, is an app called Songza.
I love Songza.
So, because as much as I am a podcast geek and love to listen to a variety of podcasts, I can't, I don't know who can, but I certainly cannot focus and listen and also do something productive where I have to think. So in order to do one of those more productive tasks on my computer, I can just put in my headphones and listen to the ambient, what is it called? It's not psychedelic something, ambient bass or something like that. And it's just kind of this, I'm not even trying to make the sounds it makes, but it's
come on, let's hear it. Let's hear it. Come on.
No, it's just this there's just sounds that somehow hypnotize you and can make a person be just in the zone. And anyway, it's very helpful to me.
Cool. Yeah. So Songza, if you guys never heard of it, it's sort of like, what's not Panera,
Pandora? Pandora bread.
But it has the concierge where it will predict based on the time of day, what mood you might be in, what kind of activities you're trying to do. So it's more of almost an emotion-based DJ in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, the one I always pick is working with no lyrics. And one of the choices is the ambient, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, ambient bass. And it's just these sounds that they're not so relaxing that they put you to sleep, but they somehow, there's enough of a beat to get you, I don't know. You just got to listen. You'll know what I mean if you listen to it.
So, all right. So we've talked about managing ADHD. Are there any other, before we kind of move forward, are there any other tools that you think the listeners should know about?
No, not that I can think of. I mean, I think everyone has their own method, and sometimes you try one thing and you think it's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but then you never use it. So how great is it? So I think with anything, you've got to find what works for you. And aside from it actually doing the task, you can have, you and Alan talked about this in the last show, you can have as many alarms and timers and prompts and reminders, but whatever it is that you're being reminded and prompted about, you have to then go do and follow through with. So I just think it's a balance of figuring out what works for each person.
You have to use the tools that you have.
Right.
Okay. So now we're going to shift a little bit to, I think when it comes to ADHD and being successful, I think that the having that perseverance and that resiliency is so critical because, when we live with ADHD, especially when, like you and I, who are both kind of late diagnosed in life, weren't diagnosed as kids, there's often a lot of bumps in the road, a lot of things that we kind of look back at and did not really go very well, or we made things harder for ourselves. What are some of the things that maybe you can think back to where maybe you had a moment where you felt like you kept kind of running into brick walls or even getting knocked down by them? Did you have any of those kinds of moments?
I think just it sounds so basic and simple, but just reading for me, whether it was in college or in my day job before I knew I had ADHD, I always felt so weird and different that I would read a paragraph or two and then there'd be a sentence about Sally and I'd think to myself, who in the heck is Sally and where did she come from? And then I realized I don't know because I don't know any of the stuff I just read because I was thinking about what we're going to do for dinner tonight. And so reading and being able to focus and learn that for me, like if you were to say, hey, Kim, read this book and give it to me versus an audiobook or a podcast, I would pick the podcast or the audiobook any day just because that's how I can more easily consume the information and process it than to sit and read. Even with medication, it's still a bit difficult for me to sit and read something. So
what I'm hearing is that a lot of the reading that you were trying to do, you realized you were not absorbing anything. You'd read something, you would trigger a thought, and you'd go down those rabbit holes of thoughts, realizing that you're not taking it in.
Bingo. Yeah. I'm sitting here nodding my head up and down like, yes, absolutely. And just really frustrating when you don't know why that was, like prior to being diagnosed, it's like, why, how come everybody else can read? And I struggle so much with it. And now I know why. And, it's just being able to know that about yourself and then be able to focus, knowing that about yourself.
As you were saying that, I was kind of thinking back to when I first got diagnosed in college and started taking medication and how really powerful it was. I'm even getting kind of choked up thinking about this. When I would start reading and I was actually retaining the words that were on that page and realizing that my entire life, like that never happened. And now I just read, 10 pages and I could tell you what just happened. Yeah. And I don't think people who maybe haven't experienced that realize how frustrating that can really be. Yeah. So,
I feel I'm right there with you as you were describing that. I remember the first time I took medication for ADHD, although it's not the medication I'm taking now, but I remember it was the way I describe it to folks is that it's almost like a light switch came on in my brain and in my life where all of a sudden I felt like this is how everyone else is. Mm-hmm. And this is how I wish I could have been my whole life. And I'm just now realizing it because I needed help with, the medication. And so, because for folks who don't have ADHD or don't understand it, or they think like kids are just hyper, or, people are just, different and more spunky than others, that's the best description that I can give them. And they're like, oh, that would feel kind of, that idea of a light switch flipping on is a bit like, oh, all of a sudden
it's like things are clear. Feeling normal for the first time.
Right. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, okay, I guess I could kind of relate, but
I have an analogy that I don't know if I've shared it on the podcast. Those fiber optic kind of like sensory light toys that have like the kind of flower outs.
Yes.
Yeah. So the way I kind of think about it is without medication, that's what your focus is. It's kind of dimly lit focus in all directions. You take the medication and it's like grabbing all of those fiber optic individual lights, grouping them together and now you can actually focus in the direction that your intention is focused on.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So yeah, it's really powerful because I think too about how many people won't even give medication a chance, and it's, to me, it's like, if it doesn't work for you, fine, but if you're struggling with ADHD, try it.
Right.
Talk to your doctor about it, obviously.
Right.
And, but yeah, it changed my life. I mean, it really did. In a lot of ways, I say it saved my life.
Yeah. Well, just like any other thing, in my opinion, whether it's entrepreneurial, I love that word because I can never say it.
And I can never spell it either.
A lot of people live in fear, or they're just so used to being in their comfort zone that they think that they can handle it on their own and they don't need to branch out and seek help or try something new. Like you said, just like try it. Like the worst that can happen is that it doesn't work out for you. And when you were describing that, I was thinking about, all of the ups and downs of starting a podcast and things like that, how like I didn't know anything, but I was willing to try it because why not? Right. And now here I am, however many months later, and I love it.
How many episodes do you have?
This week will be 53 on generosity philosophy.
Yeah, that is awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And Molly and I were just 5 weeks into the okay to be LGBT. So it's we're still in the new and noteworthy of that one.
That's a fun period. And then it's like, oh, where did I go?
Yeah. It's fun because like I want to be excited with her, and I am excited. But since I've already gone through it before, it's like I don't want to feel like it's forced excitement, if that makes sense. And so she's texting me, hey, we're number whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. And like, because I remember that feeling of getting so excited when you get, a certain amount of downloads or whatever. And, but it's kind of like once you've done it, it's like, I don't know, it doesn't have that same pizzazz, but not to say I'm not excited. It's just, it's new for her.
Do you think that's related to the ADHD, that, it's harder to get that same excitement?
It might be. And as I'm looking up at I have a vision board that I actually call my vision wall because it's just a wall of photos and things that I want to do. And, here's this beautiful picture of the Taj Mahal. And I think to myself, because we've traveled and gone to places, like we went to Chichen Itza in Mexico, and I remember seeing pictures of it and hearing about, like watching some kind of a documentary on the Discovery Channel or something.
Is that the place where there's that big sinkhole?
Like a cenote, where you can go swim down underneath it. Mm-hmm. It's in that area. I'm not sure if that's in the same like ruins or what have you, but stuff. I think it's around there. We've been to several places in Mexico, so I can't remember. But anyway, my point is that like I remember seeing photos and hearing about it, but then I get there and I'm like, wah wah wah. It's great. Don't get me wrong. Like it's great. It's beautiful. It's fun. It was really hot, but because I've had such a buildup in my mind, it's almost as if like, oh, it doesn't live up to whatever my huge, like high expectation. I don't even know what I'm saying, but so I don't know. Is that an ADHD thing? I don't know.
Well, it's when we go and see new things, often we do it because it's exciting, and that's kind of that dopamine rush. And we know that with ADHD, we don't regulate our kind of influx of dopamine real well. So yeah, I mean, it could be. It's something to maybe think about, explore kind of that trail of thought for a while and see where it leads you. Yeah,
interesting. I'd never really thought of that before until you said that. And then I was looking up at my pictures.
And no one could see this except for, you and I, since we have the, Skype going. But I'm see that in the closet doors behind you. I think they're closet doors. So there's a reflection. So I'm trying
you could see me?
Yeah. Oh, I can't anymore.
Oh, I can't see you.
Oh, really?
Sneaker. You've been spying on me.
Oh, no. I thought you could see me. That's so interesting.
A picture of you. That's so hilarious. I could pick in my nose.
Oh, there we go. Now can you see me now?
Hi, Eric. Now that it's the end of the show, now I can see you.
Hopefully it doesn't, affect the bandwidth.
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
All right, so where were we?
Sorry. We're like, oh, we just discovered each other. There you are. So anyway.
Look at that shiny object.
You're asking about what's behind me, a closet door. It's actually just the door to come into this room.
But I'm seeing the reflection of some of the stuff from your vision board.
Oh, right, because it's, yeah.
Because it was funny when he first said it, I was like, oh, I wish I could see that. Then I was like, wait a minute, I think I can see what you're talking about.
Just above, it's behind where the computer is.
This has to be making great audio content.
I know, I'm thinking, people are like, what in the heck are they looking at or talking about? Like, they've already 15-seconded us. Like, let's go past this. Anyway, good times.
Okay. Let's see. Refer back to the notes. Get myself back on track here.
I'm all self-conscious. Like, I hope I didn't roll my eyes at any point or like act like I. That's hilarious. But
what's interesting is in the past I've always thought that if I could see someone, in real time, in some ways that it would be sort of almost distracting in the conversation, and I've actually found that I've been enjoying being able to see your facial expressions.
Right.
I'm sorry that you haven't been seeing mine.
That's okay.
You haven't seen all my eye rolls and all my.
No, that's okay. I sometimes record my shows where you can see the person, and sometimes because of the bandwidth, like you said, I'll just do the audio. But it's all good. We discovered each other 40 something minutes in.
Only on the show.
I know. It couldn't be ADHD Rewired without something squirrely like this happening, right?
It's funny. I did maybe about 6 or 8 months ago, I did a webinar for, I think it was for Adhd, which is the adult ADHD organization. That the conference is actually this week. And I did the webinar that I gave was called Productivity 2.0. So it was all like using technology and stuff. I'm actually going to be presenting that this week at the conference, and we were having major technology issues, like on my end, getting myself like set up, like things weren't working right, and it was just that, like, how ironic is that for the guy that's talking about technology to be having all these technology issues?
Yeah,
but I did then learn that my internet upload speed was not fast enough, which is part of why the issues that I was having were occurring. So it's mistakes happen, failures even happen, and as long as we learn from them and ask in an open, non-judgmental way, why did that happen? We can find a lot of answers there and really use that to grow in all areas of our life.
Right. Like I always say, it's failing forward. I mean, that's what I say to myself. Yeah, it's like you don't know what you don't know, and if you make mistakes, that's okay, as long as you keep moving forward. And so I'm constantly failing forward. In fact,
Every
I think
day.
and I think that, like, even in my day job, I was telling you earlier that I have to facilitate meetings, and sometimes it's boring, but I try to kind of psychologically pump myself up and convince myself that, okay, going in here, speaking in front of these people, having to come up on the fly with questions and being somewhat entertaining and engaging with these folks that are strangers, this is good practice, Kim. This is me talking to myself. This is good practice for podcasting, for potentially if I do any kind of, speaking engagements. And so then I can, as much as I feel at times it's boring, kind of convince myself otherwise, if that makes sense. And if I, like I did last week, spill my soda in the middle of the meeting, or my computer's having tech difficulties where it's not printing and I have to shake my head and say, I'm so sorry, you guys, the state's equipment isn't up to par and I have to excuse myself and go pick this up off another printer. I think for the people that we work with and people in general, it's like, oh my goodness, this person isn't a robot. Even though they're like a quote unquote professional, they screw up and fail forward, just like all of us, And so I think it's a good thing.
Speaking of authenticity, there was a moment in that and what you were just saying that I had no idea what you were just talking about. I completely tuned out for a moment. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
So I don't remember what the question I asked you, we were talking about failing forward, and then
I don't think there was a question. We were just going.
It was the moment that you said that you were going to talk, that you wanted to do more speaking. Then I was where I was like, wait a minute, what are we talking about?
I don't know what we were talking about.
It was funny because last week after we ended the with Alan, I ended the recording. I fessed up to having a moment like that, and I didn't fess up to it on the show. So I thought that, you know what, I'm going to fess up to it. And we had our moment where I was just like, I have no clue what you were just talking about.
I can't believe it hasn't happened for me yet. I think it's just because I recently, within the last half hour before getting on the call with you, had taken my medication. And so I think it's like has me in the zone right now.
Awesome.
Talk to me in a few hours. I'll be squirrely all over the place.
Did I ask you about, because we were talking about reading earlier, and that would have been a really great time to ask you about our favorite book. And better late than never. Do you have a favorite book that you can recommend that's either about ADHD or philosophy or something that, you know, you think that our listeners would really value?
Sure. And you may have mentioned this book in the past, so I apologize if I'm being redundant, and I actually had to go get it out of the closet. So it's right here in front of me. Now that I know that you could see me and I can see you, I could hold it up and show it to you, and you nodded. So I know that you know what it is. It's a great book called You Mean I'm Not Lazy, Stupid, or Crazy? By Kate Kelly and Peggy Ramundo. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know. I was going to say, I don't know where I found it, but I'm looking at the back of it, and oh no, that doesn't tell me where I found it. But anyway, I must have paid full price. And it's one of the few books, Eric, that I actually could sit and read. And it sounds really... I'll just say it like it is. It sounds a little selfish to say, oh, one of the few books I read is because it sounded exactly like my life. But I think with a person with ADD or ADHD, as you read through it, it's like, whoa, now this makes sense. Validating so much. And having the person, just like the title says, I stopped feeling as though, like, you know, because you hear like, oh, you're lazy. Why don't you do that? Or, you know, not that people called me stupid or crazy, maybe behind my back, but the whole part about the laziness is like, you know, with ADHD, it's not, you know, it's not that you're lazy. It's just, well, you have ADHD. So anyway,
I actually take offense to that word. I call it a 4-letter word in the realm of ADHD. We know there's been functional MRI imaging studies that have shown that for kind of cognitive or kind of boring based tasks, that the ADHD brain is working twice as hard as the non-ADHD brain. And often we're coming up with half the results. So the notion of laziness it's what you see on the outside with not really understanding what's happening on the inside.
Yeah.
So
where can people get that book?
They can get it at Amazon. There'll be links on the show notes. Thanks, Kim. I love talking to another podcaster because they know just how to do it. And I was just like, wait, she's setting something up for me, and let me swing at that. ADHD Rewired listeners, because you are part of the community, Audible is offering you a free audiobook download with a 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Check out books like You Mean I'm Not Lazy, Stupid, or Crazy, a self-help audio program for adults with attention deficit disorder. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Don't worry about remembering it. It will be in the show notes. And if you're using a podcast app that has notes in it, check it out. The link might be right there.
Awesome.
Thanks for the setup.
Yeah. I was like, before I go down a rabbit hole, I know that he's working with Audible. So no, that's really neat. Definitely one of the few books that I have picked up and can say that I actually read and paid attention to.
And that's how I felt when I read Driven to Distraction. That was my first book that I read on ADHD after I got my diagnosis. And I remember I was living at my parents' house. I think it was after I graduated from college. Maybe a summer in between years. But I remember just sitting there and I couldn't put it down. it was like this was my entire life explained in a book.
Yeah.
And that's an extraordinarily validating experience. So, and I know that book is on audible.com.
And I definitely ought to pick that up because my doctor, when he first decided that I wasn't crazy or lazy or stupid, he said, get that book, the one you just described, Driven to Distraction. Is that what it's called?
There's one that's driven to distraction and there's another one driven by distraction. And I can never remember which one's which.
Well, he suggested I do that. And like any person, like many people with ADHD, it's like, okay, I'll remember that. And then I never wrote it down and I never remembered. And therefore I never bought it or read it. So I should.
You know, that's the top lie that people with ADHD tell themselves is I'll remember that.
You know, and I appreciate you reminding folks of that, Eric, because I can say that in the last couple months since I've been listening to your podcast, that is one thing that I stop telling myself. Or when I catch myself saying something like, oh, I'm going to call her this afternoon. I won't forget. I say, Kim, really? You are going to forget. You need to take 30 seconds and put it on your phone and like input it as an event or, calendar it so that you get these little reminders and you tell you so that you can't forget.
When you say 30 seconds, I mean, let me just, as a quick example, if I were to, I'm holding my phone up to the microphone. If I were to say, remind me in 1 hour to call Kim.
Which Kim?
Which Kim?
So, I mean, that took what, 4 seconds?
Right.
I mean, that's why I love Siri, because you can do that. You can just, without even looking at it, push one button and tell it what you want it to remind you to do.
Yeah. Siri and I, sometimes she doesn't want to cooperate with me.
She can be temperamental sometimes. I think maybe she is ADHD.
I guess. Sometimes someone told me the other day that when they switched their Siri, I did air quotes there, to a man's voice, somehow he listened better. And I said, that can't be, like, that has nothing to do. Maybe that since you thought you were talking to a man, because this is a woman saying it, maybe you spoke more slowly and enunciate. Like, what does that do? Yeah. So in her mind, she was like, when I turned my Siri into a guy, he understood me better. And so I have my Siri is a guy. I call him Sam or whatever.
I think I'm going to have to experiment and try that.
You should. There you go.
I really want to try the one with like the British accent because I really have a thing for accents.
I know. You were giving me an accent earlier. It was pretty funny.
So should we move to the next part of our show?
I'm tempted to speak back to you, but And
usually my accents come out as like a really bad like mashup of like British English and like Australian.
Yeah.
And, I probably am offending everyone from each one of those regions when I try to use my accents.
Can I tell you a quick little story about that?
Yeah.
Because I would get to make fun of myself, which is always fun. My mom is from Costa Rica. And so even though she's been in the United States, like at least 33 years since I was born, she has a really thick accent still, Hispanic accent. And a lot of people have a difficult time understanding her. Well, she's my mom. I've heard her voice my whole life. And so even though it's pretty broken English, I know exactly what she's saying. Well, when I tell a story about my mom to folks, my wife will constantly tease me and say, your accent of your mom is like an Asian accent. It sounds nothing like her. It's not even like of Hispanic anything. And where are you? That's what you hear? I said, I don't know. So yeah, like my mom, tell me, okay, let's just play a game. Can I tell you a sentence like that would be what my mom would say?
Absolutely.
And you can be honest with me and tell me.
Here's what I'd love you to do. Oh, wait. Could you do you have like a standard intro for your podcast?
It's a guy that I paid on Fiverr.
Oh, okay.
So
I was going to say, can you like say your intro in that accent?
Oh, no. But my mom would just say something like, I love you so much, Kimberly. I be going to the store and I think of you all the time and I want to see you soon. That's what I hear and that's what I think she sounds like. And everyone else is like, that is not what your mom sounds like. That sounds like you're trying to imitate somebody who's Asian or from, and I hope that doesn't offend anyone. That's my take on how my mom's voice sounds. But anyway.
So if you want to be part of I'm making this up right now, the what's your accent contest, no, there's no prizes being awarded, just for fun. Go on ADHD Rewired, the facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. Say hello in your regular voice and then speak something in an accent just to have fun. I don't know if anyone will do that, but I think that would be fun.
I could see Alan doing that.
Alan will totally do that.
He's
going to put like 9 different posts on there.
I was going to say, he probably has a plethora of different accents.
And character
male and
voices. Female. Okay, so I think now would be a really good time to go to the random question round. This is the part of the show that has nothing to do with ADHD, which then paradoxically has everything to do with ADHD. Are you ready?
I sure hope I have some decent answers.
And the one rule that I'm making up now is you can't ask me the same question back for things that are like trivia, because I haven't actually looked any of this stuff up.
Right. Well, let me ask you this, though, because I wondered to myself, how do I just give one-word answers? Because mine, I always want to give a story. So should I just say what I think and then move on? I love this. We're just coming up with it on the fly.
How about... What if if you're going on too long, I'll just go like this.
Yeah, next question. Okay, good. I like that. Just shut me up.
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. How many people live on Earth?
Too many. How do you like that answer?
Okay. If you had all the time in the world to develop mastery in a specific skill or area, what would it be?
Mastery in a specific skill or area?
And this is something that you don't have any skill in at this moment.
Oh my goodness. I have no idea. Yeah, I feel like the Jeopardy music should be inserted here. What would I do? I don't know. I got.
Okay. If you could choose between flying or being invisible, what would your superpower be?
Invisible.
Why?
Because I like Harry Potter and I thought of the cloak. Why? Although I have many dreams about flying, you run and you jump and you're flying and it feels so real, at least to me and others who have vivid dreams and recall them. But I'm actually afraid of heights. So I can fly in a plane and I'm good to go. But if you were to say, like, let's go to the top floor of this however many story building and look down, I might need to have a restroom nearby because I might pee my pants.
I think that's going to somehow get included into the audio mashup at the very, very end of the show.
Awesome.
Okay. What is the official size and weight of an NBA basketball?
This big, which no one could see because I'm just holding my arms out.
Right.
This big. I don't know. I have no clue.
Okay. What is the very first thing that comes to your mind when I mention snuffleupagus?
Sesame Street?
Give me more than that. Come on. Fine. Now the second thing.
The second thing is that I want to meet him. And speaking of dreams, when I was little, I had this very vivid dream that Sesame Street was just up the road. And if I just walked enough blocks, there it was. That's all I got.
Did you ever stop and ask, can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street?
Okay.
Will I edit that?
No, that in, but yeah.
Okay. Let's see. What other ones do we have? What's your favorite movie?
The Notebook.
Okay. I know nothing about that movie.
It's kind of a chick flick, but...
Okay. I like some chick flicks. Some. What is the scientific name or the asterism for the Big Dipper?
I got nothing. I don't know.
Okay. I know that one.
You do?
Ursa Major? Or Ursula Major? Ursa?
Oh, I did know that.
I think I know it. I used to know all of these. I loved it. I took an astronomy class when I was in college, and for our final, we had to go to the actual planetarium in Peoria, and so it was awesome. So I got to reserve time to actually have the entire planetarium to myself to study it. So cool.
Yeah,
I'm talking about like an ADHD toy. Oh my gosh. I get to move this big shiny object all around, and it feels like I'm actually in outer space.
That's cool. Yeah, it's funny because I do oftentimes know random facts that who knows where they're stored in my brain or why I remembered them. But then some other basic things like that, I'm like, I don't really know.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to ask you about. Oh, I do want to ask you, and I think that I'm going to have this be kind of a standard question that I end the show with. And I want you to share with us your favorite childhood teacher, and what do you remember about her? What made her or him your favorite teacher?
That's easy. It's my 6th grade teacher. Her name is Connie Erickson, and I could talk for an hour about her. She's still a huge part of our lives. Like my kiddo calls her Grandma Connie. And it's a long story, but what do I remember about her and love about her? She just wouldn't take crap from anyone if you were being disrespectful. So, for example, when kids would use the R word, and I've taken a pledge to not use the R word, so I won't say it, but I'll just say that it's, for somebody who has cognitive delays or any other physical disability or what have you. And she did not tolerate it. And she just taught us a lot of things that weren't about school. So in terms of like morals and values and things like that go beyond the classroom, I think is what stands out to me about why.
Did she teach you how to think?
She teach
or
me
at least encourage you to think?
Oh yeah. And it's probably not fair for me to use her example versus just a teacher I had for a year, because she's been a part of my life since that. I feel like I have to tell the backstory, but just tell me to shut up anytime if I'm going on too long. But basically my older sister, she was her teacher. My sister's 8 years older than me. So Mrs. Erickson, Connie, knew my family since I was a kid. Then she ended up being my teacher. Then she had me mentor her students as I got older, and I was like in high school and stuff. And then I helped coach Special Olympics basketball with her husband. And so they kind of took me under their wing, as we joke and say I'm like their adopted daughter, even though I have my own parents, and I spent a lot of time with them. And they definitely were people, both her and her husband, who made a huge impact on my life. I could sit here and say that I probably wouldn't have gone to college if it wasn't for them and their influence. So yeah, they taught me how to think a lot.
So it sounds like they went kind of the extra mile for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're wonderful, wonderful people.
Well, Kim, I would actually love to have this whole conversation keep going for hours, but I have things to do, and I'm sure that you do too. So I think we're going to have to wrap this up here.
Sounds fair.
I want to really thank you for coming on the show. And if people want to find out more about you and what you're doing, can you kind of give them all of your contact information and where they could find about you and your podcast and all of your awesomeness?
Yeah, thanks. Basically, all the ways you can contact me through social media. If you just went to generosityphilosophy.com, there's all the ways you can connect with me there. And regarding the OK to Be LGBT podcast, our website is just that, OK to the number 2, BE, the word B, LGBT.com. And you could reach out to Molly or myself on social media or via email that way. And
I'll have all the links to that in the show notes. Can you maybe give us the 15-second kind of explanation of what each of these podcasts are?
Sure. I like your facial expression because you knew, could she really keep it to 15 seconds? Highlighting heroes who live to give is what generosity philosophy is all about. I interview folks, whether they have a nonprofit, charity, maybe just a campaign or cause that's making the world a better place. And so promoting what they're doing and encouraging people to help out if they can. Okay to be LGBT is just as it sounds. Molly and I are both, we identify as gay or lesbians. And so we share our personal experiences and stories and also talk about things that are, in the media. And we soon will be doing some interviews. But right now it's mostly been in the 5 episodes, her and I just talking about various subjects that are related to the LGBT community and some that aren't at all. And a lot of our listeners, are allies and they don't identify as LGBT, but they still enjoy the show. So you don't have to be gay or anything like that to enjoy the Okay to Be LGBT podcast.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being generous with your time. It's a philosophy that I try to also give as well. And maybe in the future we can talk about, because I am involved in CHAD, which is a nonprofit. Really, it's the nation's largest nonprofit organization focusing on the needs of both children and adults with ADHD. So I know that the national conference is actually going to be in Chicago in my area this year, November 13th through the 15th. So maybe as we're getting a little bit closer to that, maybe we can feature Chad on your podcast.
That would be great. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
That'd be a lot of fun. Well, Kim, thank you so much. We will definitely, I'll see you online, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
All right. Thanks so much, Eric.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, podcast listeners, you have just listened to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Thank you for joining me for another episode. I hope you enjoyed today's. I've been seeing a lot of new people sign up for my email list at my website, ADHDrewired.com. I'm hoping that means that you guys are waiting for the announcement when there will be a free webinar and other information leading into the ADHD Rewired Coaching and Accountability Group, which will begin in the middle to end of August. I just keep coming up with so many ideas on how to make it better and how to systemize things. Ooh, I like my systems. Help other people find this show by leaving a review and clicking subscribe in iTunes and Stitcher. You can also follow this show on SoundCloud. Are you on Facebook? We are. Go to facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. And while you're there, you can click the link to request to join our community. Please share with me your thoughts, ideas, and your questions, because this show is for you. I want to know what I can do to answer your productivity challenges and other challenges that you are facing related to your ADHD. I want to thank Kim Trumbo once again, and I decided to reach out to her mom because I thought she was just so special, and she had a message.
I love you so much, Kimberly. I be going to the store, and I think of you all the time, and I want to see you soon.
And then I asked Kim, do you have any final words you would like to share with the ADHD Rewired community?
Actually, I'm invisible.
Until next time.
Wah, wah, wah.